to be born. So, wow, we are finishing up a really strong 7-day retreat and a 3-month Ango training period. Yeah, it's been a strong retreat. Yeah. Some wonderful Dharma talks, Teishos, salad dressing sutra. That was one of the highlights. Stories are part of what glue us together. I mean, the idea that, narratives are a delusion and we need to get rid of them, that's just silly. Part of the richness of our relationships is the stories we tell each other. So I want to come back to where I began at the beginning of this retreat about talking about context and relationship. Because I think the question for me anyway at the moment is, what is required of me at this time? What is being asked of me given the world that I find myself in? And the world I find myself in is not normal. It's not normal, at least from my experience, it's not normal. So if the world I'm living in, I find myself in, is abnormal, then what does it mean to be normal? I don't have an answer to that, but that's the question I'm asking myself. And the thing that really bothers me about this moment is that I feel like we are kind of losing, been thinking a lot about what is conscious, what makes us, what is consciousness? And why might it be important for us to understand what consciousness is? Because so we are analog. We are Homo sapiens. We are animals. We have evolved in this biosphere. We are not digital, but we are conflating increasingly our analog nature with the digital culture we find ourselves in, which is perfectly natural because we have so much of this now. Roshi and I got new iPhones recently, and then we thought it'd be a good idea to get iWatches too, so now we're never out of touch. And I got hearing aids the other day, so I can now hear you all, but I could also take phone calls from my hearing aids, so I'm really not out of touch. I'm not sure I like that. So the question I brought up at the beginning of this retreat still is what I'm meditating on, is why logical types that Gregory Bateson talked about a long time ago are still important to understand. And logical types is a strange word. I think it comes out of math, like set theory or something. So it's like two logical types might be, you have chairs. All chairs are furniture, but not all furniture is chairs. So furniture is a different logical type than a chair. Furnitures have more kinds of furniture, right? Chairs are just, all chairs are furniture, but not all furniture is chairs. So that's a difference in logical type. Now, why this is important is that we are, it seems to me, we are increasingly ceding our analog human experience to a digital culture. And in the process, we are losing something important about our lived experience and the richness of our human relationships face to face with each other. Now, the statistics I've been reading, correct me if you have another view of this, is that increasingly younger people are spending more time online. And they spend less time face to face with people. Sometimes they have a hard time making eye contact even. So, and yet, again, the studies I've read, psychology and learning, indicate that when kids are together more, they do better. When they are in person, they're more productive. So there's implications here. We came out of the pandemic with Zoom. We came out of the pandemic, and I'm not, I have to qualify this because there's those of you here on Zoom, and I'm not, I mean, no criticism of any of you on Zoom, but we got this monitor in the Buddha Hall because of the pandemic, and I would have never imagined that we would have a TV in the Buddha Hall. It would just, and in fact, it went in with me kicking and screaming. I didn't want to put it in here. But this is the time we're living in. And I think we need to think carefully about what we are giving up gradually. It's not like it's happening all at once. It's just happening gradually. One of the things I've given up is dressing. I've gotten more informal in my dress. I wear my gym shorts. I wear my sweatpants all the time now because it's more convenient because I can go out walking and it's easier to wear them. And so one of the things I think that happened out of the pandemic is we're dressing less formally, at least in America. Maybe in Europe it's probably different. I don't know how it is in Canada, but and we spend more times on computers. I've been walking a lot. I went walking yesterday and I have my watch now that will track my steps. Every step gets measured here, you know. And I couldn't figure out how to turn on the app, so I just went walking, and halfway through my walk, I figured out how to turn it on, right? I walked a half a mile. But when I'm done, the walk said I only walked like 0.1 mile. I'm looking at that, I'm upset because my watch didn't say I walked a half a mile. Well, this is an error of logical type. It doesn't matter what my watch says I walked. I walked a half mile, and it's good for my body, and that's what counts, because I walked a half mile. But I was upset because the app didn't record it properly. Analog, living systems are complex. And complexity is part of the richness of our humanity and of the biosphere that we are trying to live in, which we are increasingly, endangering to not only other species, but our own. And isn't it telling that maybe this is the first time we've ever even considered in our imagination the possibility that we could make ourselves extinct as a species. So we spend a lot of time in practice talking about personal psychology and how we create suffering. It's all good. It's all wonderful. We need to do this. But there's also a larger context in which we live, a larger world in which we have to survive and find a way to make a living, to put food on the table and pay the bills. And the game you have to play to live in this larger culture is one that is insidious, that is unsustainable for the planet. So none of us are innocent. We're actually living, we're all killing. We are part of a system that is, it's kind of like a cancer. You know what cancer is? The cancer cells are in our bodies already, and then for whatever reasons, the cancer takes over and it starts growing. And it grows faster than the other cells in our body. But the cancer cells depend on the host, on us. Our economic and social system is kind of like that. If we get cancer, hopefully we won't, but a lot of people do, and a lot of people die from cancer. When the cancer is at the height of its toxicity, it's pretty much the cells have grown and kind of suffocated the host. And you die. And the cancer cells die with you. That's kind of the world, isn't that kind of the paradigm that we're living in? The economic system has perverse incentives which are not sustainable. So the world we're living in is dismembering our living membership of organisms in it. Banks sell debt and rob the world. Industrial agriculture is poisoning the farmland, removing topsoil, poisoning the water. Schools are preparing the next generation for a world that was existed 50 years ago. What's that? Why? Medical industries, medical services serve the pharmaceutical industry in many ways. You take a pill so you can take another one to correct the one that you already took, to correct the side effects from the first one. The cure may be worse than the wound. Politics is unreliable. The technology is robbing us of conversations at the dinner table, of relationships between parents and children. We are ceding a part of our analog experience to the digital culture we find ourselves in. And I guess I'm here to defend being analog. It's pretty good. You know, can't get to sleep anymore. I can't fall asleep. Once I get to sleep, I'm great, you know, but finding increasingly don't get to sleep till like 12:30, so we slept in this morning. Missed the first period, you know. Getting up, we're all combobulated, oh, we missed it. But we have to sleep. Sleep is good. That's what animals do, mammals. We all sleep and some hibernate. So we live in a very precarious time. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here at the end of the session or anything. I don't want to like depress you all by talking about global warming, but if we're waking up, if we're paying attention, it's hard to miss that the world we're living in is not working for the whole, for the good of the whole. We are not living in a world that has economic and political and social systems which are sustainable. So what is the... And so then what always happens is we end up with a kind of crisis epistemology because we all get anxious and we see the crisis coming, and we reach for, with the best of intentions, we reach for some solution to fix it. We'll fix it with electric cars. We'll fix it with robots. People think we'll fix it with technology. I hope they're right. Probably not. We reach for a solution that's linear because that's what at least engineers do. Engineers, linear solutions are great for building toasters and electric cars, but not for fixing a biosphere. No. Because the biosphere is complex. So are we. And when you pull something out of that living experience, you abstract it and you take it out of its context. And now it's not, and now you're trying to fix that, but you're not fixing the underlying cause of the illness that is happening. You're just treating the symptom. And often you're creating more problems by doing it that way. And we don't know how to, I don't think we know how to be with complexity. We've been doing it in this retreat, by the way. We have been being together with a lot of sanity and wisdom and humor. Let me just give you one small example. Our culture, waiting is not something people like to do anymore in our culture. And apparently, I'm told if you go to Disneyland, they'll entertain you while you wait in the line for an hour, because if they didn't, people would get really pissed off, And they're still pissed off, but they have like Dumpy and somebody, come out and entertain you while you're... Well, if you feel like I don't go to gas stations anymore to have an electric car, but when I used to go to gas stations, they have a TV right there. Yes. Why and you can't avoid it. You can't turn it off. So the corporations are mining our attention. So one of the things we do in sesshin that is really sane, I can't believe I'm saying this, is eating oryoki. I wouldn't have said this a year ago. I was so happy that we no longer were eating oryoki. No, we're finally going to eat like Americans again, We're just going to like everyone go off into their own room and eat, and get it done with, But now it's all ritual. We're eating together. Someone just can't tie the knot on their oryoki, and we'll all have to wait. And we're all That's good. That's sane. That waiting. That's the cat's meow. That's where it's at. And that's the place we don't want to be. We don't want to be bored. You can't take your place in the world if you don't know how to be bored. You can't have conversations with people if you don't know how to hang out and wait. And we have taken much of this away. We have taken away our capacity to be in the commons together. Just go into any common area, a bus station, a waiting room in the doctor's office. Is anyone talking to each other? Oh, no, I'm too busy. I gotta check my Facebook, see who responded to my last post. There's many incidents now that are being reported. There was one happened in New York where a guy stood up in the subway with a gun and no one noticed. So they were too busy reading they actually didn't know that, and the guy held out the gun, you know. I mean, what do I have to do to get your attention, folks? They were all reading their cell phones. They didn't notice. And so that's not only a problem in terms of the quality of our relationship, it's a problem in terms of safety. If you are not paying attention in the public sphere because you're doing your cell phone, then that could be dangerous. You could actually miss some cues around you that it might be important to pay attention to. So I think the good news, if I may say so, is that we have this capacity to be face-to-face, to meet each other, and to support each other, to care for each other, to find a way forward in this world in which we are really taking the precepts to heart of not killing, supporting life, because the game that is being played in our world does not support life. The incentives are perverse. A dead shark is worth more than a live shark. What's the matter? That's not normal. Everything's based on profits. You build tear down, you plow out some of the rainforest and build a beautiful eco resort, a green resort. And you make a lot of money. People pay big bucks to go there on their vacation. So what's the matter with that model? So, so we come back to this, what seems like maybe a pedantic point, but I don't think it is, this error of logical types. The map is not the territory. This is a map. See my cell phone. I get all kinds of beautiful things on the cell phone, but this is not the same as carrying on a conversation with you face to face. It is just not. Our lived experience is rich with all kinds of context. Many of them we can't see. So it's easy to discount why this is important to love each other and be in relationship with each other in a way that is kind and paying attention. An example, if you pay attention to someone as a category, you'll have a certain kind of conversation with them. And we do this all the time. Anytime you judge someone, you've known someone for 10 years and you haven't seen them for 5 years and they show up and you remember what they were like 10 years, and you've already put them in that category of what you thought they were 5 years ago, but they've changed. So if you have a conversation with someone and you're perceiving them as a category, you have a very different kind of conversation than if you perceive them as a complex being. And that complexity, we can't see it all. We can't know it all. In fact, probably the majority of the complexity in our lives that makes up our relationships is unseen. we're like an iceberg, you know, we're just the tip. The part of us that's rational, that knows something, is very small, and then the rest is underwater. And that we've been appreciating this actually in Nyango, studying the Yogacara. Again, even Buddhism, including Western psychology, says there's, you know, a huge part of our experience is unconscious. You know, every night we go to bed and dream, it's unconscious. That's a really important part of our experience. And so it's easy to discount because we can't verbalize it. And so I'm just making a plea for complexity. I think we need to not only appreciate it, but make room for it in our relationships with each other, in the community, and it happens, this error of logical types happens, and once you start seeing it, you'll see it everywhere. You remember when George Floyd was killed, and all the Black Matter movement started. We don't need to talk about the politics of that, but there were lots of conversations going on then about policing. And I remember one of the conversations that I thought was very interesting was, why do police mentally ill people? That's not what they're trained to do. They're trained to enforce the law. They're trained to catch people that break the law, not people that are mentally ill. And yet, in the police departments are constantly in contact with people that are mentally ill or homeless. There should be a whole nother group of people that do that are trained to do that. Policemen aren't trained to do that. That's an error of logical type. And then instead of paying attention to that, which seems to me important, we ended up with defund the police. Someone came up with this brilliant idea, let's defund the police. Oh, that really helped. And then everyone's talking about that. So when we're in a situation in the world we live in, when the alarm bells go off, they're really distracting and fragmenting. And we kind of go to that, and we reach for that as a crisis and something that we need to solve and fix. But we do it in a linear way, which is never, ever going to fix the underlying complexity that's taking place. Racial, systemic racism in institutions, in our history, that's complex stuff. We are, it's a more interesting question, it seems to me, is who are we together? How do we co-create each other in a conversation? Not who are you or who am I? That's reductionist, but everything in our culture is reductionist. Like defund the police. So we go to a crisis epistemology, and rightly so. We start saying we can't be above 2 degrees Celsius because of that. There's another possible way that comes from the indigenous culture, which I think I've talked about before, which is kinship time. A different kind of epistemology. You say, gee, that's really unrealistic. You're going to solve global warming by paying attention to relationships? Well, maybe. We haven't tried it. It's possible. Because if you just treat big problems in a linear way, you end up, there's people that get the advantage of that, and then there's usually poor people and brown people that don't, that actually get the brunt of the pollution or the problem. So to say that one way to move forward would be to honor kinship time, well, whole different paradigm shift, whole different shift. I don't even know how to talk about it. You ever seen stick bugs? They look kind of like trees. How did they get like that? How many conversations in terms of evolution did it take for that bug to start to look like the tree? Huh? Praying mantis is another example. Happens all over nature. We are co-created by we are formed by our environment. We aren't isolated. We are. Snow fox blends in with the snow. What would a snow fox be without the tundra? Snow fox would not be without the tundra. And we're like that too. And that's what kinship time is about. It's about relational reciprocity, choosing to live in a world where the paradigm is we will do what is in the long-term interest of the good, of the whole, and we will serve that. When they talk about cybernetics and systems theories, they often talk about attractors. It's something that attracts attention and energy. So two of the attractors that are quite likely right now that are concerning that we could be pulled towards in the future. One is chaos. And it's already here. Look what happened in the pandemic. Remember the run on toilet paper? We live now in a global world that is so tightly interconnected with distribution networks that if one of those goes down, it has a significant impact on a lot of people. And we are vulnerable because we live in this tightly global kind of economy that we're vulnerable. And we take our food for granted, but there might come a day when we don't get the food that we would like because some distribution network went down due to chaos, due to a pandemic. We have another pandemic. We certainly could. So chaos is one of the attractors. It's right here, and it's, things start to get so disrupted and pulled apart that we have a hard time putting everything back together. That is one attractor. Not a very good outcome. Another one is dystopia. Just give up. Just let someone do it for us. Let's have a dictator. Let's just let someone be all powerful, and they will decide. We'll centralize power, and we don't have to do a messy voting anymore. We don't have to, have debates, and we don't have to read or be educated. We can just go along with whoever's in. Everything is based on power anyway from that model. And so if everything's based on power, then that's the only thing that matters is who has power.
Lemmings.
Huh?
They're lemmings. Lemmings.
Yeah. So I think that's another attractor. And then I think if you try to think of what's another attractor besides those two, it has to be something that is honoring the complexity of living systems in such a way that we can live and act and behave in this world in a way that is supporting life, supporting the whole. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to do that, but I just think it's important that we ask the question, what is this time requiring of us? And I don't think this is an easy thing to deal with. I'm sorry to bring it up at the end of the tree. but it's what I've been, this is the koan I've been working with, and it usually comes up often when I'm in retreat, because I'm kind of dilating, I'm paying attention, and where my attention goes to is the world I find myself in, and I find the world I'm in sucks the life out of me. And I don't know what to do with that. But it just comes up because that's what when I'm opened up through this practice, then I start noticing there's a lot of things in the world around me that don't work. But what I do notice is that this works. This works. This has been working. And this is rich and wonderful that we do this practice together. And there's a reason the Sangha is called one of the three treasures. Because this is a treasure, what we have here, the relationships, like I said, the highlight of the highlight of the retreat for me was the salad dressing sutra, and it was so funny at the expense of Roshi, but she had the good humor to talk about it, so I feel I can talk about it too. But luckily, she wasn't sitting close to me like in the last retreat. She was sitting a little further away. But that's an example of the kind of context that's. You think there's this stereotype about Zen, like, oh, we're going to go and do a retreat, and I'm going to be, in my bubble, and I'm going to get clear, and I'm going to become enlightened, and then I'll be peace and no suffering. I'm exaggerating, but you see the point, right? No, that's not what Zen is. Yes, each of us is responsible for our perceptions and our how we behave, but we are here together, and we are co-creating each other. And this is a great, wonderful gift that we have. It's a precious thing that we can be face to face like this still. This is not so common or normal. And if this is abnormal, then yeah, I'll take that. If this is abnormal, then I'll be fine with being abnormal, because this is rich. And I'm so honored to be practicing with each of you and see the way that you sit, with the earnestness that you bring to it, the seriousness. But not taking yourselves too seriously. So we always have Daigu around to help us. They say whenever you have like priests in a spiritual tradition, and they're wearing these fancy clothing, like big hats, you need a clown around to make fun of them, just to keep things, keep things real. So when the priests start toning in that voice, preaching voice, you need a clown around to really, make fun of them. So a lot of these things come out of the indigenous cultures. Their language is much more relational than ours. June and I, Roshi and I and Teisho, some of the rest of you have gone to the indigenous Lakota retreat? No? Not yet. Yeah. We had the really good fortune to be with Lakota elders a couple of years ago. I think Roshi and Teisho have gone quite a few times. And they have this term, Teoshpaye, means all my kin. And they mean that. They really mean that's a value. That's a core value in their culture. They think of, the elder's talking and a chipmunk runs across and says, "There was one of my ancestors." And he does it with such kindness, friendliness. There's sanity in that. There's relational, mutual response. There's just so many things in that way of treating kinship as our friends and being friendly to all our kin and extending that kind of loving kindness to animals, to trees, to nature, to rivers, talk to trees. So that's all I have to say. I think the question that I have, or the koan I have at the moment, is how to proceed, make the best use of the time I have left here as a human being. We're only here for a short while. For me, it's about supporting the Sangha and supporting you, and trying to make sure that we carry on this practice for future generations, because our well-being is so much more than something we can measure on a clock on our wrist. It's so much more than that. Our well-being is the well-being of our community. It's the well-being of future generations. It's the well-being of the biosphere. And if the biosphere is sick, then so are we. So, we could have a little discussion. Hopefully I didn't depress you all too much by talking about these things. Anyway.
I'm good, thank you. You talked about context, and I'm going to say something that I never thought that I would say after one of your Dharma talks, which is I have a different viewpoint. That in the context of world history, this is not abnormal. I recall the Buddhist tradition moving from verbal to written because of fear that all of the wars and famine were going to end the world. There was World War I, which was called the War to End All Wars, and it kept that name for almost 30 years. And then it changed to World War I because there was World War II. The death of Pax Romana moved on, and then there became Pax Britannica, which fell, and now there's Pax Americana. And anybody thinks that this is going to last forever, it will not. So the cycle does continue. I do agree with the dystopia, and scarier and I mentioned this last night to you, than the dystopia of Orwell of 1984, where a fascist dictatorship takes away our ability to have free will, is the dystopia of Aldous Huxley in A Brave New World, where we choose to give up our free will. And the last human being was named the savage, but he was the last human. He was the last analog in a society. So for me, I see the cycle continuing, so I'm less pessimistic. And by the way, just one plug, December 22nd, I'm sending the Roshis thousands of miles away for my Dharma talk on humor and the Dharma. So we'll be touching on some of that.
Hello. I might be one of the only people here that was overjoyed by your talk. Because you had said something about feeling abnormal or feeling like you didn't, the views you had were something that nobody else shared. And everything you said was things I was saying to other people and saying to myself, and talking to people and spending a lot of time feeling like maybe I am insane. Maybe I am out of touch. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am too sentimental about how things are here and the way that things are connected. Maybe I should just be like everyone else. And I spent so much time just trying to find the foundation where I could find my footing and have the path forward for myself with regard to knowing how do I live my life. And to come here and hear you say the things I've been thinking. I could not be more happy.
Thank you. Eric?
What he said, for sure. So I took a little break from this 7-day retreat and went back to work for a couple of days and tried to bring my Zen. One thing I love as a librarian for over 20 years, at the beginning of my career, it drove me nuts, but people are wonderful at finding ways to use things other than they were intended to be used, or not following the rules as they were designed, not using spaces as they were designed. At work, the teen space is supposed to be for teens, but adults are constantly in there, and we have such an overflow of study rooms, so we have to give the study rooms away to adults because there's nobody, they're all in school anyway, the teens, so, or people will, that they will come and sleep there. And a few years ago, we changed the policy to allow them to sleep in the library because it's so hard, to sleep out on the street. So I just know that, when we think about things changing and it feels kind of locked in, just also let's remember we're complex too, and however the systems are designed and however they change the system and eliminate this and eliminate that, people are still going to end up figuring out how to work within that next system or how to break it. We're really, really good at that stuff.
Thank you for your talk. I find the idea of analog and the idea of kinship time to be so nurturing. It just makes me breathe easier, just even hearing about it, bringing it up again.
What you spoke to, thank you. It really resonates with me. Having a beautiful retreat and then all these tears, right? And in retreat, I don't have anyone to blame it on. I'm sitting here by myself. I'm with myself, and I realize it is what you speak to. There's some, it's like maybe a form of the here drops the other shoe that I'm experiencing. Oh, such the relief, the sigh. I'm analog. This is what my body needs. This is nourishing. And then And then the grief that we just give that away, or how slowly we're giving it away without realizing we are. It reminds me of when I was really little, the fireflies. We would get jars in our whole neighborhood, all these kids. It felt like 50, 100 kids, and we'd chase them. They would be our night lights every night. We'd keep our jar, we'd poke the holes, we'd let them out in the morning. And I remember being an adult coming back from college and saying, like, there's no kids, there's no fireflies. And I felt, this is what you do is you grow up, you give away, you stop doing some of these childish things. But do we? Should we? Are we buying into a sickness that, and it keeps just so slowly evolving. And I think this is the space where we nurture that part of us so that I can step out with the equanimity that I need to bring the love and trust that I think is missing from our culture. It's a complex, so complex, and we have to start trusting one another. And who goes first? Right? Right, who goes first? And it's only in this space of being able to trust one another. My food shows up so delicious and beautiful right at a bell. My cushion is there. My Samu work masterfully done. It all just happens. And I can just trust in that goodness is here in a community, and we can keep growing it. We can leave here and take it out with us. And that's really what this practice, I think, means to me. And thank you for articulating my tears that I could not really identify. It just feels so great to have a mirror or someone else reflect what we're doing here and how just meaningful this practice is. Thank you.
I guess to comment on your prognosis of the state of affairs, I think you are right, but I would like to say that I'm deeply hopeful. Deeply hopeful. Because I think you were mentioning about the idea of consciousness and the importance of that and the importance of awareness. And to be able to understand that we aren't objects that are simply just in motion, and that we're able to look around us and say, what is our impact? How are we affecting things? And we're all doing that here right now. That's part of the practice. And with our ability as humans, our responsibility to understand our relationship to things, we have the ability to transform things. We can build skyscrapers or carve away at the earth and pour concrete all over it, or we can plant the rainforest, or we can do any of those things. We have the capacity to do so, and we have the consciousness to make those choices and to be aware. And our shared awareness and our shared goal of compassion to all things, I think that that's inherent. I think that that's lost, it's confused, it's distorted, but I think peeling back the layers of all people, it's there. And that we have the responsibility to the world and to ourselves to form and forge positive relationships. And I think that we have the capacity. I think there's a lot of sentiment in our day and age now of this idea of modernity being this thing that's linear, like you said, that it's going the direction that things are going, or the nature of our digital aspects of things and things like that is this thing that's going to continue in a line and be an, exponentially or, further down of what it is. But we aren't a line. We have the potential to redefine however we want to do things. And I think we're using the tools wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one way to put it is that we're often in double binds, where the choices we make are, neither choice seems like it's actually very good, but you only have two choices, and so you pick the least worst choice. But there are all kinds of traps or double binds that I think the culture we're all part of, and I think part of practice is noticing when we're caught in a trap like that, whether it's our personal issues or it's a collective issue, and being able to kind of identify that double bind as a place where we're stuck, and then there's something we can do about it.
Yeah, I think something I think a lot about is people have this deep feeling of annihilating things that are invasive species, things that are not supposed to be here. And there's a lot of interesting examples of, invasive species, like in Iceland, where it's a problem that we caused in a lot of ways with overgrazing of cattle and other things when people move, colonized in a way Iceland. But the lupin is a foreign plant, comes from somewhere else. I can't remember where, but it builds the soil. It literally builds the balance in the soil, and it wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't supposed to be. And so we have this idea of somehow our impact is only bad. It has no capacity to be nuanced or capable of being defined by us or understood by us or intentionally done in the right ways. And that I think when you can let go of the fact that we are, as humans, we have every right to be here, just like anything else. But we have the responsibility of needing to understand our impact and live symbiotically with everything else and do the work. You don't get to just dump trash into a hole. You have to find out how to live here and not destroy everything in the process. And I feel deeply hopeful that we will and that we can.
Roshi?
Yeah, yeah, Genshin.
Hi, good morning, Roshis and Reverend and Shuso, and good morning, Sangha. Roshi, I'd like to speak to what you said about children and statistics and the internet and families, but I'll do it very briefly because of time. So as a family therapist, I have the opportunity to work with families and to try and put some cohesion back into family dynamics. And what has continually happened over the last 5 years is parents will call me and say, my son Johnny needs therapy. He's got a computer addiction. He's got internet addiction. And I refuse to see a child by themselves to treat them.
Yeah.
So what I say is, I am very happy to work with your entire family on your communication deficits. And in doing that, it's kind of like the family is like the global warming. And I try and tell them, if you do not do something about the system of your family and the communication between you, the relationships,
Yeah.
your family's going to destruct, and it's a matter of time. And it really goes back to, when's the last daddy-daughter date? When's the last mommy-son date that you went on? When's the last time that you did a game together, or, got silly string and went in the yard? And it really is going back to teaching the family how to play together, how to talk together, and to stop turning children into the scapegoat of the problems of a family, and then othering a child and othering an issue. Because when something's happening to a child, it's happening to the family.
Yeah.
And so many people miss that, and they send their children in, and they want their children to stop being on the internet. But the children are on the internet because certainly it's needed in schools, but they're looking for connection. And the primary connection is in the family. It's in the family, whether it's 2 people, 5 people, 12 people, whatever you call family. So I do appreciate you bringing that up, because the 9 to 13-year-olds have the highest suicide rate in the last 4 years, 9 to 13. So I really it's what's happening on the internet. So I really like that you brought that up, because I think that is where we can start. We can start in our families. We can start in this Sangha, and we can start, in our houses, and turn back in and stop looking at our children as our problem.
Yeah.
Because they're not, they're trying to cope.
I love hearing you speak of the family as a whole system and not isolated parts. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're almost done. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else you want to say. I want to invite you all to council tonight at 7. It's our closing of this session, and then tomorrow we will have the Shuso Hosen ceremony, where our Shuso will enlighten us. And so again, I just want to say how grateful I am to each of you for all the ways you have shown up and all the ways you have found a way to be here and to be with each other and to continue this practice day in, day out, with all the challenges that may come with that. And I just want to encourage you to keep going. This Zen path, I think Zen has always been a little kind of subterranean, a kind of a countercultural rebellion against the status quo, and though we don't have large numbers, if you look at the demographics of who are Zen Buddhists in America, we're like the mosquito on the back of an elephant. We're very small in numbers, but I think Zen has had an outsized influence on the culture. And I think a lot of this comes from this, and then there's all the stereotypes that we don't need. Zen also gets co-opted, Zen perfume. But this, again, this notion of our direct experience, our lived experience, really, that's all we have. And I think Zen is always encouraging us to come back to our lived experience before we know everything about what it is, and that we could show up here with the wholeness of that, and just that's the practice, is paying attention to our experience moment by moment and trying to keep our hearts open. As many good talks this session about Zen is a way of the heart. It's not just mental. It's not just an intellectual thing. It's the way we show up embodied, and the way we show up for each other that really matters. So I hope too that because we have this amazing, rich wisdom tradition, that we will steward it well into the future. Because wisdom isn't a given. Wisdom is expensive. Wisdom takes time. Wisdom takes boredom. Wisdom takes waiting. Or maybe not, waiting might not even be the right word. If you're waiting, you're still expecting. Maybe just wisdom is being able to be okay with whatever is here and not have to fix it or and there's no it. There's no. So and we are all intrinsically awake as we are. So again, I think the practice is about trusting our experience as it is and not second guessing ourselves so much. And realizing that we have enormous resources. We have enormous capacity to be resilient in the face of suffering, in the face of challenges. And we are much stronger as a community together than we are as isolated individuals. We will get more done if we learn how to collaborate and work together than if we just go off and become a hermit. Although that's not a bad idea. It sounds like a good idea. I think maybe I'll do that. So thank you again. And let's finish some announcements. Okay.
Yeah, so,
Roshi?
thank you, Roshi.
No.
A few things about the Zabutones. The square things works best as a team, 2 people opening and taking it out. Then zip it up again. That's what I found is best for washing. The Zafus, try to have it in that area because it weeps. You know, it's buckwheat hulls and it's got this fine powder that comes out. So we'll have to do some vacuuming, so just kind of leave it kind of in one area when you're doing that, and then zip it up as well. It goes all the way, about over halfway the zip goes.
When are we doing that now?
Yes,
Before lunch?
please, because then I will put it in the wash and hopefully
Okay.
it'll be dry before 3 o'clock.
So we're gonna do that now and then have lunch?
Yes,
Okay.
It should be pretty fast with all of us.
All right, everyone, thank you. See you at 7 o'clock tonight. Please come.